right, so that we're conscious of time, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Olivia Henry Harris, Program Coordinator with the Council of Michigan Foundations. Just want to go through a few kind of housekeeping things before I hand it over to Betsy and get us started with our program. As usual by now, please be sure to mute your mic unless you're speaking. Utilize that chat box. Have your name and organization in your name box on your screen. And before speaking, introduce yourself so that we know who you are. And then also we'll be sending out this recording as well as some follow-up resources too in the coming days after this program. Also, feel free to be on camera. That will be great for cues and physical cues and things like that. But if not able to, we understand. And with that, we kind of want to get into an icebreaker question just to get us started. And I'm going to drop it in the chat as well. And the question is, how old were you when you first started getting a sense of philanthropy and service in your community and volunteering? And where was this? So feel free to drop that in the chat. Would love to see just kind of the variance in those ages and what those experiences were. So I'm going to give it just a couple minutes for responses to come in so we can all see those. Great, they're coming in. Thank you. Wonderful, you guys. Seeing a lot of high school, 5 a few times now, definitely volunteering. Church was a lot of people's first introduction, sports. Great, thank you. Keep them coming. A lot of the younger age range too, so that's great. 5 to 6, even with some councils in your area, those are great. Thank you so much. All right, so with that, thank you so much for sharing. It's just very interesting to see where you first had that interaction and the growth that can happen in our communities too. With that, I am going to pass off to Betsy Peterson, the Director of Learning to Give.
Hi, everyone. It's really great to see how early some of you were exposed to philanthropy. And of course, you're all in the nonprofit career. So I wonder if there's a correlation. I want to introduce you to Learning to Give. Many of you already know about Learning to Give, but we are an online resource for you where Learning to Give is full of great resources that will help you guide youth to have an understanding of their own role as philanthropists and civically engaged youth who grow into civically engaged, philanthropically engaged adults. And Learning to Give is a program of the Council of Michigan Foundations. And some of you serve on a youth philanthropy task force with us, which is made up of people from all over the state of Michigan who really would love to see youth more engaged in philanthropy. And how are we going to make that happen? So we envisioned a world where kids learn about giving and philanthropy from early childhood to their teen years, and what would our world be like? So we had some good discussion about that, and then said, okay, what did it take to get there? And that's what we're working on. In addition to Learning to Give, which our vision is that all kids are exposed to experiences in philanthropy, we have a youth program for grant making that Olivia will tell you about in a little bit. And depending on your role here today, you will probably look at Learning to Give a little differently than somebody else might. So just to get an idea of what types of roles are here in the room today, put in the chat whether you're here as an educator, parent, foundation representative, youth leader. Just put in the chat and then we'll see what types of people are interested in youth philanthropy. For example, last week I got a phone call from a grandmother in a family foundation, and she said, I have these younger grandchildren who really don't understand the foundation's work. Our older grandchildren have had a lot of exposure to it, but the younger ones haven't. And I'd really love some resources that will help them understand what philanthropy is and what their roles could be. And we started looking at Learning to Give together, and she walked away with 6 different things she was excited about. Now, if I were talking to an educator, I might have a completely different conversation, but Learning to Give is full of great resources for all of these things. And I hope you're browsing through all of this amazing variety of perspectives that are here in this call today. Olivia, would you like to explain McFIP?
Yeah. So MCFIP is Michigan Community Foundation's youth project. If you hear the term MCFIP, that's what it is in this context. So CMF provides guidance and support to MCFIP, that project, which helps to coordinate the growth in the pipeline of youth philanthropists across our state. And so, kind of the history here, most of the youth advisory councils that are housed at community foundations across the state of Michigan they are grant making committees. And there are about 86 of them across the state, have been around for almost 30 years, and each hold their own endowments for that YAC, Youth Advisory Council, and grant, youth granting to youth. And for that, they also do a lot of community service, leadership development, as well as site visits for their grant partners and things like that as well. To this day, about $2.5 million go out in funding about every year from those YACs across the state, and over 1,500 youth are in that annually. And those are connected to the community foundations across the state, and CMF is here to support those YACs. With that, anything else on that part, Betsy, that we want to cover?
I don't think so. If there are any questions about what we've just talked about, go ahead and raise them in the chat. What I'm going to do now is share my screen and show you some highlights from the website. And as we're doing that, we really appreciate if you add your thoughts about, oh, I could use it this way, or I like this for this purpose. And you can either do that by speaking up or by writing in the chat. So let me share my screen. Can you see that? Okay. Yes. So this is the Learning to Give website. It's at learningtogive.org. And the first thing I want to show you is how you can get started. And that is right here on this menu item called Get Started. And I want to do an activity with you. And I think this is a great starting point, because whenever you're engaging kids, the first thing you need to do is get connected, understand what they care about. And our ultimate goal is that youth become leaders. And the activity we're going to do together is one that helps you identify that what they care about and helps them take a leadership role. So under the Get Started menu, scroll down and you see this Build Community page. We're building community, building understanding of one another. And the first activity there is called the Blue Sky Envisioning. And I've done this activity with adults, youth and adults, kids of all ages, and in different settings. For example, Olivia's group meets every year for an annual youth conference, and I met with kids from that group, and I'm approaching the activity and thinking, now what is it they all have in common? Because that helps us do envisioning together. And what they all had in common is they were from Michigan. So in that activity, I said, oh, what do you love about Michigan? What could be better? We had such amazing conversation just with that, that they brought up things I wouldn't have thought of. Like if I were an adult leading service with kids, I wouldn't have started the same place they did. So this activity helped me understand them. So here's where you get to it, and it is a step-by-step. Well, today, Olivia and I were thinking about what would be a valuable conversation instead of what do you love about Michigan and what could be better. We said our question would be, what are some safe places for youth in your community? And what we're going to brainstorm around that a little bit as a group, and I'll take you through the blue sky activity with that in mind. So, because we're not in person, we're going to use Mentimeter. Have any of you used Mentimeter? It's an amazing virtual tool. We're going to use their word cloud tool because we can get a lot of ideas on paper and see our collective thinking really fast. So Olivia put a link in, so you can go directly to my page, the page I have showing here. Or if you want to go on your phone and just type in www.menti.com, and Menti is with an I, then use the code that's there. You can answer this question. What are some safe places for youth in our community? You can just brainstorm. My home, there you go. And you can do up to 8 responses, and we'll start seeing some commonalities among us pretty quickly. And the nice thing about a word cloud, as many of you already know, when things are common to many of us, they get bigger, they show up more prominently, and then we know those are the kind of things we can talk about next. So if I were working with youth, I would zero in on schools. I would say, all right, let's talk about schools as safe places. And I also, in this case, might look at what is showing up as less prominent too, because that could have a role for discussion as well. So I'm seeing school as a safe place, and isn't that a wonderful thing to see, that kids feel safe there? Youth group, a relative's home, community park, religious organizations. Youth group is pretty prominent, boys and girls clubs. I think I saw some representation here in this group there. All right, so there is another room in this Mentimeter. And then the second room, let's see, how do I get to the second room? Do I have to go back? I think I do. Now the question is, what are the gaps of safe places? What are the gaps of safe spaces for youth in your community? So what's missing for that? Maybe a little bit harder to answer. But there we go. What are the gaps? Olivia, can you speak to how you got to the second page? Did you just arrow over?
Good question. I don't have it up on my end. I was
okay.
In the chat.
That's all right.
For me, at the bottom underneath submit, it says next question.
Okay, good. Thank you. Because my screen looks different. All right, so weekend groups, outdoor spaces, evening spaces, environmental education centers, teen programs. Weekend groups is kind of rising up as a bigger gap. Parks. So if I were working with youth, and actually even with you, and we were really diving into this, I would pick some of those bigger words like weekend groups and parks and transportation, and then ask you to envision it. Let's envision a weekend group where youth feel safe, and we might sketch an image of that. We might write a little description, we might brainstorm in small groups, but we visualize what that would look like if that was a safe space. And then we talk about how do we get there. And then the next step in a visioning activity like this is to say, okay, what's our first step toward it? And have those discussions. And as an adult with youth, we use our empathy and leadership skills to help youth step forward while we step back and follow their passion as they say, well, the next step would be, let's learn about how other people do weekend groups. Or, you know, I think there's a place in my community that does that. Let's find out what they're already doing and what their needs are. and those discussions can happen in that way. So that is an example of Learning to Give's Blue Sky Envisioning activity. I wonder if any of you can see a use for this in your program. Can you think of a variation or something that appeals to you about this for the youth you work with? If you have any ideas, you can unmute or put it in the chat. But this is part of our Build Community page, and it's just the first of a few. A youth needs assessment is a beautiful application. Community needs assessment is another really great. Have participants write a headline they'd like to see in the news ahead, maybe a year or 5, about their success. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to envision. One of the taglines of the Blue Sky Envisioning is, what is it going to look like in 10 years when this problem is fixed? So I like your idea, it's similar. What do you love about your community? What are the challenges? Great. And you can see this can be done with youth or youth and adults, or even any adult group. It's a very flexible activity. Olivia, we were going to move into groups. I missed that part.
Yeah, so for this part, we just want you all to be able to have a little bit of brainstorming. So about 7 minutes so that you're able to kind of even go through the activity. And the question that we're going to ask everyone, I just drafted in the chat, but it's also envision and describe a really great safe space for youth in a community, and what are the steps towards really getting there. And so we'll break you up in randomized groups so that you're kind of with different people and able to have that discussion. We really just want you to be able to practice the activity that we'll be doing, that we would like you all to do with the youth in your communities and work and programs. And so when we come back, we'll just do a very quick, like, what was the best highlights, lessons learned, all of that from the activity, and then we'll get into some more resources as well. Are there any questions?
Simply discuss that question that's in the chat.
All right, I'm going to break you up just for about 7 minutes in small groups, and then we'll come back and have a quick discussion. Welcome back, everyone. Would anyone like to share just kind of what feeling you got from doing the activity, what kind of bubbled up in there, any highlights you would like to share with us from your different rooms? Feel free to come off mute or put it in the chat.
There's some good notes from Breakout 7 there.
See that it's Breakout Room 7 said inclusive spaces, cultural relevance, consistency, building relationships and trust, accessibility, meeting with young people where they are. Wonderful. It was good to reflect and dig deeper on these things and these topics. Great. Any other feedback, perspective?
Yeah, if I could jump in. My name is Kristen. Hi, I'm out of Portland, Oregon with the Schnitzer Care Foundation. And some of the folks in my breakout group, it was interesting because they were interested in, they were like in different stages in developing their programming. And so there was definitely plenty of knowledge in the room for one person to be like, oh, we want to get to where you are. So it felt like I'm speaking on behalf of other people, but there seemed to be just a lot of knowledge that could be shared so that no one is reinventing the wheel, even though we're all in different places.
I'm wondering, I'm in Delaware, Ohio, and I came in late. I had a class. I'm wondering if anyone else is in middle school and how they've gone about implementing something or even starting the conversation with pushback from parents, administrators, and the board.
Tina, are you meaning pushback from what exactly? We just came back from a blue sky activity.
An inclusive space we were talking about in ours.
I mean, I could offer something as a former, I'm Kimberlyn Butler. I sit in DC, but this is when I was in my career working in philanthropy in Atlanta. But I used to be a middle school teacher and I was leading philanthropy and started this campaign called The Future Is Now. I was telling my group, and we had young people engage in a very youth participatory practice of asking one simple question across the city of Atlanta. What do you need for your most promising future? And we were very intentional in partnership with Emory to have the results analyzed and shared with those stakeholders, including school board, city council folks, all the people who could actually wish or grant those dreams for young people. And there was just a range of what they needed, which was really powerful for the community. So that might be one way strategy to like engage on the front end so that they can see themselves as part of the process and granting those wishes and being a part of the future that we all want to create.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah, I saw some more great responses come in to the chat. So thank you so much for leaning into that activity. Betsy, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And I got a request to just talk just a little bit more about what Learning to Give is. You just got a sample activity. And our vision here is that all kids learn about and they're equipped for lifelong engagement in philanthropy as givers of time, talent, and treasure. And to do that, we've built a very nice selection of activities, resources, lessons, information that will help you in all the roles represented in this group to guide youth to understand their own role in philanthropy and civil society. We call what we do philanthropy education, and we build experiences depending on the age of the children. It might be a lesson plan that gets young children involved in thinking about a person in their community of a different generation and establishing a relationship. Might be reading a book and talking about the characters and their generosity. There's just a huge variety of activities. And today we're going to give you a nice sample of it. But how are we going to reach all kids, not just the kids whose parents really put a focus on it or who have it in their social studies class? You know, how are we going to reach all kids? And Learning to Give is a resource that can help you no matter what your approach is. And everything on the website is free, and we get it out globally. We work with partners. We work with the Council of Michigan Foundations to spread it through foundations and nonprofits. Yeah, our goal is just to reach every kid, and you're part of that. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of a tour to give you a better snapshot of the variety of activities we have, and hopefully some of these will really fit your thinking about that. And please let us know if you have any further questions or need more clarification on that. Let me get my chat up so I can see. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is our social awareness resources. These are fairly new on the website. It's under the Teach menu, Social Awareness. And last summer, we had a teacher in residence who worked with us. She was from Detroit Public Schools. We actually have 2 teachers working with us. One of them created this wonderful cultural competence facilitators guide. And this is full of activities to help have discussions, to help kids learn more about the variety of culture in their community, of why we do things the way we do, to create more awareness, sensitivity, and action, knowing they're part of a very diverse world. Our second teacher in residence created these culturally responsive social emotional learning for social justice activities. And I'm going to just open this up a second. These guides follow the social emotional learning 5 categories. And we brought a lens of social justice to that. And not just my own awareness of self, but my awareness of myself in community. And that's how these are unique. They're thinking about my role in community. So the 5 different areas of social emotional learning are here. And I just want, just to give you an idea of what this is, I'm going to share this very first one under self-awareness. It's called Identity and Self-Portrait. And in this activity, young people talk about identity and where their identity comes from. And then they each create an identity self-portrait. And we have things about our appearance that are visible, what we look like, our skin tone, the attributes of our hair, whether we wear glasses, what clothes we wear. Those are all very visible. We also have many identity markers that are hidden, some of which we wish people would know about, some of which we hide for whatever reason. And in this activity, young people actually illustrate that. They split their, I'll open this up. They split a portrait in half, and on one side, they illustrate their outward appearance, and on the other side, they illustrate their inward appearance. For those of you who are in the task force with us, you know we did this with a group of adults who took it quite seriously, spent time illustrating, thinking about who their character is, what they wanted to share. And when we got done, they said, I would do this with a group of adults. This is a really great activity to help us be self-reflective, to think about how others see us and how we want to be seen. And that's an important thing when you're talking to youth. You know, in our groups where we just met, so much of our conversation was about youth bringing themselves and designing the space and having ownership. And first they have to feel safe and know that they can be trusted with revealing those hidden identities. So all of these are part of your social emotional learning, but also you're connecting with others in an authentic way. So if we're doing these with kids, we're helping to build that trust and safety. We're not going to spend time doing that activity, but I welcome your thoughts about how you might use this with youth or in your program. And while you're thinking, I'm going to scroll through some of the other activities just so you get a little snapshot of the social emotional learning. And there are more. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on. Again, I'm looking at this toolbar up here. The next thing I want to show you is something that is a great tool for no matter what your role is with youth. If you're a parent, if you're someone who works with teens who might read to younger children or reading for themselves, our literature guides are selected and created around books that have a philanthropy component, a generosity, a community awareness. And we write guides that will help you read the book and have really great discussions about philanthropy. So I'm going to just open one up to give you a sample. This one is Amanda Gorman's, new picture book, which I love so much, partly because I love her so much, but partly because I feel like it's an anthem for learning to give. It's about empowering youth. I'm just going to scroll by a few other books while I'm getting there. So you can see we have picture books and nonfiction, teen books, quite a selection of guides. The section I'm looking in right now is for Black History Month, with a curated set, but we have other curated sets. So here's Change Things by Amanda Gorman. It gives a summary of the book and what philanthropy you're going to pull out of it. It describes her vision for the book, and then it provides before reading, during reading, and after reading questions. Looking at the pictures together, thinking about the meaning behind things, and then connecting it to youth. What change have you been part of? Maybe you've moved, and so on. So connecting it to their life, showing, here's a connection. We all have strengths and smarts to make change. I'm just what the world needs. What are some things that are good that could be, what are some of the things you are good at that can be used to help others? So you can see how we're pulling the ideas of philanthropy, great for discussion, helping kids reflect and think. And then we provide some activities too. And I was just in a meeting where we were talking about data collection as philanthropy. Philanthropy isn't just about giving money or volunteering. When you collect data for the common good, that is philanthropy too. Think of citizen scientists who count the number of birds they see. But what if you took a poll and shared information about what you learned? That is also a kind of philanthropy. And at Learning to Give, we're always trying to pull out those ways that we give and share and connect in the different activities we do. So that just gives you a little snapshot of one of the books in our literature guides. We're very proud of these. And Olivia, do you want to share some ideas of how people have used this for service?
Yeah, so a few different ways that I've seen these type of literature guides be used, especially with those YACs, Youth Advisory Councils, are youth reading to youth, either the older youth reading to younger youth, or doing tutoring programs and able to help learn how to read and literacy there, as well as just diving deeper into community and philanthropy, but from different perspectives than what many may be used to as well. Another way, if we're looking at it from a funding perspective, is funding these kinds of books to get in the hands of people too. And that way they can also be culturally appropriate for different cultures around our state, country, whatever your programming area is. And that's also been a push of Michigan Department of Education, really culturally appropriate reading, so that it encourages reading even more too. For that, how else would any of you potentially see this being used in your youth programming, in your life, anything like that? Would love to hear a couple of examples. And thanks, Pam, for the comment in the chat. Definitely plenty of subjects, and searching comes in handy.
If you have literature guides selected here and type in any word, it'll pull up a literature book that has that theme you want to pull forward.
Just saw a great one for Pam there, a book club for sure. And even family book clubs or with your organizations, it really can vary and needed in every location too.
This is Trafina, and I know for us at Applewood, we have a state that we manage. We have story time there throughout the summertime. And so I can see this being used. We also partner with community groups to help them to hold story times in their community. And so being able to identify books and give them this resource that can kind of lead their discussions with residents in their community would be an excellent way to use this tool.
Great, thank you.
I highly recommend this one right here, Look Both Ways. So good. Really good one for a book club. It's a young adult novel by Jason Reynolds. This past summer, in an attempt to make sure our selection of literature guides was representative, we did a survey, an audit of our titles, and looked at, were we representing different cultures and ways of being, and really upped what we were offering. Well, after we did that, it led us to something I want to show you next: simple, safe service guides. So we made that ability to do an audit of your library a service activity. So let me see where that is. I think it's here. Equity in your library. So our simple, safe service guides are a great tool for getting kids into a variety of service, depending on what their interest is. So this Equity in Your Library activity walks them through examining their own library, whether it's in their home, their classroom, their community, their school, by using either our spreadsheet that we used for evaluating ours, or we have this little fun bingo grid where they can, say, do I find a book with someone who has a disability? Can I find a book that has that's by an African American man? Can I find a book by an Indigenous person? So helping them look for a variety. But the spreadsheet is what we use for ours. So we said, why don't we make this available for kids to do as a service activity? And then once they've evaluated their library and see the gaps, Olivia, what did they do?
They granted, and they filled their libraries with these types of books. So for YAC examples, they provided funding to be able to fill the library up with those types of books, and did their research on what really is needed in their communities too.
And we thought it would be great if kids at a YAC use this activity to grant money, say, here, if you use this activity, we will grant you the funds to supplement your library. And maybe you said that, Olivia. Forgive me if I repeated it.
All good.
But our simple, safe service guides are, again, like the literature guides, we provide quite a variety. And you can search our whole collection, whether you're interested in the environment, the arts, civic activity, community things. I know we have one on making masks. We have others on, finding out what your neighbors need and providing service. So a very nice variety of simple and safe service that we created during the pandemic when kids were at home, so that families could engage their kids in service and have lots of ideas and step-by-step guidance. So that is under our Teach menu, simple, safe service. Right underneath that is a tool called Film and Video Guides. These are great for small youth group, for classrooms, for anyone who wants to talk about a small concept and get in a little bit deeper. There's a Grand Valley State University professor who made a video called What is Philanthropy? And then he donated to Learning to Give little video clips. And then he broke them up by theme. What is philanthropy? Philanthropy through social activism, and so on. Historic preservation, funder-grantee relationships. But each of these video clips is only, like 30 seconds to 2 minutes long, and they're perfect for discussion. So Learning to Give created guides to use with youth, and they can be youth-led because it gives an introduction. It asks a question to get them started, shows a very brief video with a very focused topic, and then gives the discussion guide and a follow-up activity. So if you're looking for 15 to 30-minute activities to, for thought-provoking conversation about philanthropy, these video guides are a really great tool. A little bit hidden here, but they're under Teach, Film and Video Guides. Yeah. Oh, and thank you, Amy, for bringing up Project Giving Kids. That's a wonderful partner that shows how families and nonprofits can work together with great service activities.
Thank you. I love those service guides. I think that those are amazing, how you have just all of those resources where people can find those opportunities so easily. I just made a note about the bookshelf bingo for my daughter's elementary school. We're talking about trying to examine the books that we have and how we can be, more representative. And I love that bingo activity. I think that could be really great for just individual classrooms and across the school.
Thank you. Yeah. So, we'd love to have you think about how you can use these resources in your program. So we just wanted to give you a nice little overview. And each of these things is searchable, but this great big search button right here is a great way. Like if you want to just search for a lesson, go here. If you want to search for a specific resource, go here and type in some of the words that are familiar and it will come up. Our search engine is really good. The other thing I want to encourage is we have a monthly or bi-monthly newsletter, and it has samples of these. So, if it's Black History Month, we might pull in one of those literature guides that's appropriate for the month, or a service activity, and we'll put forward different activities that are relevant to that month. So we encourage you to sign up for the newsletter right here. Another thing I wanted to show you is many of you are engaging youth in service learning. And service learning is a process that puts the ownership in the kids' hands, as we were talking about in our envisioning a little while ago. Rather than adults saying, okay, everybody, we're going to collect cans and give it to the food pantry. In that kind of situation, kids don't know why they're doing it. They don't understand the need. And you get some participation, but it doesn't really hit their heart because it's their parents' cupboard. They just don't even know why. But with service learning, it's a deeper process that has a very specific set of activities that put the ownership in the kids' hands. And we do that by building community first, building understanding of who they are, what their interests are, and what are the community needs. So on this page under Get Started, you're going to find those community building needs assessment kind of activities. Then we start developing our skills and knowledge. What do we need to know about hunger? What do we need to know about the resources in our community? How do we assess what the causes and effects are? And how do we meet different people? So the next page is full of activities related to building those skills and that knowledge. And then the third page under Get Started is Take Action. And here's where you get information about those service projects I just showed you, or the different types of service. Remember when I mentioned data collection as a type of service or philanthropy? There are 4 types of service. There's direct, where you're looking in the eye of the people or the animals or the environment that you're serving. There's indirect, where you're not there, but you're doing something that helps an issue. Another type is advocacy, using your voice. And then a 4th type is doing research, which might be collecting data, doing polls, finding out new information about that lot that seems polluted, and so on. So under the Take Action, that's really going to help kids dig into, now what can I do? So I wanted to explain that under Get Started. Those 3 pages follow that progression of really engaging youth voice. Once you've identified the issue that kids care about, this page called Issues We Care About is a great place to go next. The Mavi intern, who this year's Mavi is with us today, right? The Mavi intern from last year helped us create these toolkits. Each toolkit has an issue area of focus, and we have several different issue areas: humans in the environment, homelessness and poverty, hunger and malnutrition. I'll just let you read that. But within each of the toolkits, we have resources that will help young people dive in. So I'm going to go back up to humans in the environment. So open the toolkit. And like I said, they all have the same format. They all contain a story, definitions, key questions, background information, a bunch of learning to give resources, lessons and activities, resources in your community, project ideas, and quotes. And so here's an example of what's on the Humans in the Environment page. There's a nice story of young people being activated, some definitions to help us be on the same place, key questions, and then there's a handout at the bottom of this page where we go deeper into definitions and key questions. Then we have a bunch of links to background information so kids can learn about the issue. Here's some learning to give lesson plans. We didn't even get into lesson plans today, but we have hundreds of lesson plans that go into topics and motivations and incentives and so on. Here are some community resources that we suggest you start as a place to find out about your community and how we can learn more about the environment, what we can do. Then we give some specific project ideas for those 4 types of service. And we have planning guides here too. But here's some direct service ideas. And these are not meant to be fully fleshed out. They're just to get kids started thinking. We also link to some of our simple safe service here as well. And then we provide some literature guides that are related to the theme. And quotes are just great conversation starters. So this has been always very popular with people working with kids, to have some quotes that get them thinking. So that is the end of my tour. And Olivia, I welcome you to lead the discussion. Or
Yeah, thank you. So for this next part, before we start wrapping up, we kind of just want to pick your brains a little bit and ask, what would you like youth in your community to understand about their role in philanthropy? And keeping in mind the definition of philanthropy, we're using the time, talent, and treasure part. So feel free to come off mute or drop it in the chat. We would love to just hear your perspectives and thoughts on that, so that it can also inform our work too. Anyone can contribute to the community, and that their contribution, no matter what, is valuable. Yes, thank you. And that's why I always love to emphasize the time, talent, and treasure, because it's not only the funding piece that we all can contribute to, that anyone can give back. Thank you. What else? Like, if a youth came up to you and they were like, what am I supposed to do to be a part of philanthropy and make a difference in my community? Every child can be a philanthropist for sure. Ties and testimony, I like that, Mandy. Thank you. 2 more T's, I'm adding that to my list. Thank you so much. Every individual matters. Every individual has a role to play for sure. And these are things for us to even keep in mind as adults as well. Community service can lead to developing your passions, future career choices, scholarship opportunities, and so much more. So true. I didn't know it at the time, but I ended up going to school and ended up doing public and nonprofit administration. That seed planted for liking and knowing the importance of philanthropy in that sector really steered in a certain direction. So definitely makes a difference. Philanthropy starts where you are. Great, thank you. Kristen, we spend time at the beginning of the school year talking with students about what young people know or can do better than adults that make their participation in leadership especially important. Yes, youth, they have curiosity that often for us has started to dwindle. They can take more risk and are less risk aversion too. So thank you for sharing. And doing service definitely makes me feel good. So thank you, Pam, for that as well. Tina says, I'm hopeful to have the older students work with the younger ones. Yes, especially a service learning day. And I'm seeing that more and more, and I love mentorship in any form, good kind of forms, but it can be so many different ways. Thank you. Oh, and shout out to Camille, one of our new youth trustees for Council of Michigan Foundations. Thank you for joining us, Camille. And you get what you give. So really pay it forward kind of thing too when it comes to philanthropy. All right. Please keep dropping them in the chat. We love seeing these, hearing these. Wow. Betsy, anything else before I start doing a wrap up?
I was just thinking that, wouldn't it be cool if 5-year-olds said, when people said, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to work for a nonprofit.
Yeah, it's very rare that you hear that specific field, even though it's so many people that go into that field when you're so young. It's very rare to hear.
It's funny that you mentioned that because we had a class, middle school 8th graders in a failing school, and we had a pre-class survey and we asked them if they would ever consider working for a nonprofit. And then we had our class where we introduced them to nonprofits and gave them money to donate, and they presented to each other and they made a donation and they all voted on it. And afterwards we did the same survey, and almost all of them said afterwards that they would work for a nonprofit now because they understood the landscape and the work so much better. But they had a lot of misconceptions beforehand about philanthropy, about nonprofits, about all of that. And it didn't take that much to turn them around. So that's good.
That's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing. And also one of those things where it's the misconceived stereotype of like, you don't get paid to work in nonprofits, you do the work for free. So even just shifting that mindset with our youth can help with the pipeline into philanthropy too. It's the top of the engagement early on. Seeing some more great items come through the chat. Thank you all so much.
And I like what Catherine said about learning from what doesn't go well too, because when you give kids control, you are opening yourself as an adult leader to things going the way you don't expect. And sometimes those are the best learning experiences.
Yeah, and I see another one about shifting narrative and rewriting the mindset that comes with certain things, which is so important, especially just systems and nonprofit work and philanthropy overall. So thank you all. Anything else, Betsy, before I start wrapping up?
No, I'm really grateful for the participation today.
Kyle, I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you like to say anything?
Well, I'd love to. Thank you, Olivia, and thank you, Betsy, for putting this conversation and this learning opportunity together. For our members here present, thank you for joining, and just realize that this is a tremendous and very, very deep resource that's available for you and for any other member that you work with, whether they're working with families or working with young people, or just working with topics that you think either a student or adult learning curriculum, including the lessons plans that are shared here, can be helpful. There's a tremendous amount of really rigorous education tools available to you. So thank you, everybody, for joining. And Olivia and Betsy, thanks for teeing this up.
Thank you. And that's Kyle Kawa, our CEO and president at CMF.
And thank you for saving me for not introducing myself. Thank you, Olivia.
Very welcome. So yes, as you have seen, it's a vast, you can get lost in how many resources there are with Learning to Give. So if you ever do just need some help, some guidance, please feel free to reach out to Betsy and for us to be able to help you as much as we can. Just a couple of reminders, this recording along with the resources we shared and us flagging a few more will be sent out in a follow-up email as soon as possible. There will also be an evaluation coming to your email. Please provide any of your feedback. We do look back at those surveys and really try to do our best to navigate those as well. On that survey, feel free to put any subjects or topics that you would like to see from Learning to Give as well for any of their resources. And lastly, just thank you all so much for joining today. We really hope that this has been helpful and that you share the word with your networks about Learning to Give and the great resources that they have. And with that, thank you so much and have a great day.